Chris Ballard, who I love, their GM. He spoke. He's a very straight shooter, really direct, always honest, good man, like knows how to deal with people. And he said after they finalized their 53, you know, things were getting a little spicy. He was asked why he's the right guy for the job, despite their playoff record. And here's what he had to say.
The last 3 years not making the playoffs, it's a disappointment. I'm not going to sit here and say it wasn't. But I still have a very strong belief in what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we're going to get there. And that will not, either you believe for something or you believe nothing. Like, it's easy to vacillate and go with what the world wants you to do. You either believe in something or you don't. It's what we believe. If it gets me fired, so be it.
I do not love him. I love him. There are some Colts fans, media members, who did not love that like I do. And the frustration is understandable, right? It hasn't gone super well as far as playoff, as far as deep playoff bursts. And I'm not going to make excuses here. He certainly is not. But it's hard to have worse luck at the quarterback position than what has gone on in Indy. Colts primary starting quarterbacks, taking a look here at Jacoby Brissett, Andrew Luck, Phillip Rivers. You're seeing it right here. He had the Andrew Luck injury out the gates, the surprise retirement after that. And then I think Ballard was a victim of his own roster improvements, right? They weren't bad enough to land a top 5 pick. They're quarterback for the future. They're cycling through aging vets that blew up in 2022, and they finally get their guy in AR, and he gets hurt right away. And by the way, it's still a 9-win team last year, and they didn't have Jonathan Taylor either. So this year does mark the 9th straight season in which they've had a different quarterback lead them in passing than the one they had the year before. Okay, think about that. 9 years. 9 years. And yes, bad luck aside, part of that is on him. He has to be accountable for that. No denying it. But this is the first time they're in position to find their long-term answer at quarterback. And I think he deserves, before we start the pitchfork action, and Hamilton, please come in here, like before we start doing that, like you got to kind of let it play out a little bit. And I'll say, you know what I've sort of picked up from these GMs on our tour, whether it was Howie, whether it was Shane coming on before, and then we saw him at camp. All of this is like, and Les we kicked it off with the Rams, and like they're standing on the side, Adam Peters, they're like, don't get hurt. Yeah. Their whole thing is, and it's kind of wild to watch, because you're like, what do you do right now? Like, what are your, Ryan Poles, like, you put it together, are you kicking it, putting your feet up? They're like, no, I created, don't ruin what I have. There's only so much that Ballard can control.
Yeah, and I think he has put together a roster, a really strong roster in Indy. He inherited something that was kind of a mess from Ryan Grigson before. They've made a ton of improvements, and as you said, like it's almost a victim of his own success because you can't get that long-term answer at quarterback if you don't have a top 5 pick. You can't get a top 5 pick if you're competitive every year. So they were kind of stuck in that cycle for a little bit, and people were pointing to they cut all their day 3 draft picks the other day. And people were pointing to that as like a failure. Oh, he made bad draft picks. I look at it as this roster is so deep top to bottom that those new guys weren't ready to make the team yet. So I think that's a good thing for this roster going forward as far as their depth. There's also like when you have to make that decision and you're Chris Ballard and you know what's up and you're like don't tell me that there aren't some GMs that are like, I ain't cutting nobody from that third. Like I'm keeping them on the roster just because I don't want to deal with that sort of backlash. He's not that guy. I enjoy the straight shooterness of a Chris Ballard. And I didn't get to talk to Chris about Shane Steichen, but we certainly got to go to Indy, treated us so amazing. One of our favorite stops on the tour. Sorry, we shouldn't play favorites. But, you know, in learning about Shane, sitting with him was one thing, but then hearing guys like Anthony Richardson and veteran Jonathan Taylor talk about him, I got all the faith in the world.
I think he's a genius, honestly. I'm pretty sure people already know that, but just like, actually being in the room with him and just hearing him talk about football, the man knows so much. And it's like I'm lucky enough to have someone that knows this much about ball so he could just teach me. So, yeah, I think he's a genius.
Yeah, there are situations in the game where, you know, he's looking us dead in the eye. He's like, I have no doubt in your mind. He's like, we're going to win this game. It's like, I'm going to make sure we win this game. Like, putting it on himself as a coach, like, I'm going to make sure we win this game. And that just fires you up. And if you don't want to play for a coach like that, then I don't know what's wrong with you.
Steichen plays huge in this. He does. I mean, just ask Philly about Jalen Hurts, everybody. Over on FanDuel Sportsbook, he has plus 1,400 odds. Sitting there, plus 1,400 to win Coach of the Year right now. I think he'll have a great shot to do it. And it really comes down to health, staying healthy and doing their thing. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for watching. You can subscribe right here to get the latest from the show and check out more of the best clips from Up and Adams, or go watch a few segments from other shows on FanDuel.